One question I'm asked in almost every presentation I give is, how do I get leaders to care about customer experience? And frankly, I don't have a good answer for them. Sometimes I just say, you're in trouble. There's nothing you can do. Other times I try to fumble through a response, but we need to do better than that. And so I'm really excited to be joined today by Jeanne Bliss. She is someone I've looked up to a long time when it comes to customer experience. She is legendary for her work in the field. She's written a number of books, including one of my favorites, Would You Do That to Your Mother? And she has an answer to that question. So, Jeanne, how do we get our leaders to care?
Hey, Jeff, thank you for having me with you. It's such an important conversation because in over 90% of these transformations, right, where we're jumping on the customer experience bandwagon, what's missing is leaders changing their behavior, leaders really clicking into why this is about building growth and driving growth and earning growth, and leaders really requiring people to be accountable to customers' lives. So the very first thing that I do is, Bill, you've got to ring the money bell. As crazy as that sounds, at the end of the day, we are in business to grow our business. Now, as you know, a lot of people are talking about acquisition, incoming customers, but what we do, Jeff, it's very simple. It's doing customer math. Now we bring the CFO in, the CMO, the CEO, all the EOs, all the alphabet people, and we've really got to do the math. But the key is to do a common version of the math. What's the volume and the expected value of incoming customers? Okay, great. That's how good you were at acquisition. But in the same month, week, year before annual planning, we need to also measure in a common way, how many customers did we lose, volume and value, because one in is not equal to one out. Now, the power in this is a lot of times what happens, as you know, is around the CEO table. Let's say you're selling 5 product categories, right? Let's say you're B2B or B2C, it doesn't matter. Each one of those product categories is going to present differently and roll up their red, yellow, and green dots based on how they're doing in their category. But the CEO needs to care about, as an enterprise, are we earning and keeping more valued customers than we're losing? And that means we all have to have one common version of new, lost, or lapsed, and be consistent in how we roll it up and present it to the CEO. So it doesn't mean each of your product categories can't present, but it's got to roll up. And here's the other thing. I want people to answer this in whole numbers, not in retention rates, because retention rates give you a false positive. I'm also Italian, and I want you to think of the human. We need to take people off the spreadsheet, and we want to give people a little agita, a little sick in the belly. We brought in, even if it's 100 customers, here's the volume and here's the expected value. But in that same quarter, we lost 55 customers, worth 3 times more than those 100 we brought in. Or 40% or 40 of them downgraded what they bought, or something else. So look at the top 3 behaviors, and here's our net customer asset growth. When we can get to that.
Point something out though, because I think you're talking about something that for a lot of people are going to get uncomfortable for a moment, but you're giving them a clear path, which is, I think a lot of people in the CX world don't really feel good about financials. And you're saying, bring the CFO to the conversation to help you really talk about a common set of financials. And I love what you're saying about, let's make this real, about real people, so that we can say, this is the net financial impact.
Right.
To me, that really stands out as an important but doable step.
Very, very doable. And my mantra on all of this is clunky is good. You're not going to have it all perfect into some kind of machine that it'll pop out the answer. And that's why get the CEO at the table, get the CMO at the table, get the sales guy at the table, and definitely give the CFO a voice in building this with you. They need to be a partner, because Ultimately, we want this to be a board level metric. The other cool thing about this is that you can't cross tab your way out of it. You can't beg for a better number, and you can't refute the validity of the customers answering your survey questions, which are all the things that happen in our traditional measure. Now, in my other competencies, I do talk about where that other listening fits in, but this is simplicity at its finest, and it gives all of your leaders a common talk track to say, as a result of the experience we all delivered, did we earn the right to grow? Because two things have to happen. It's got to be simple, it's got to be irrefutable, and we've got to now think about the human and get our leaders pounding their hands on the table and going, why, what happened? Can you tell them Italian? What happened? And that's where all these other things we know about, the journey, etc., becomes part of the blueprint for telling the story of the why. But we jump to the story and we don't start with the beginning, which is the growth part. There you go.
One of the things, though, I think that I'm thinking about as well as you're describing, getting leaders to pound the table. I think a lot of customer experience leaders make the mistake, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, they bring generic figures to the argument. Bad experience costs U.S. companies X billions of dollars, and
blah blah blah. Sorry,
I don't think anyone cares, right?
Well, and the other thing is what leaders need. Let's say, you can't show up as the bleeding heart department.
Okay.
I learned a long time ago, if you're going to bring in, let's say, complaints and talk about complaints, it's got to have two things that leaders really care about. It's got to have enough tonnage that it shows you that a large volume of people are being impacted by this. And you have to have convergence, which is multiple sources pointing to the same thing. What I try to do, and I'm about simplicity, we have overcomplicated this. 20 survey fields, the way to cross-tab everything, the minutia, and then we're going to spend all our time dancing around the data. You can't refute, you either lost more customers than you gained or you didn't. And that is what's beautiful about this. And it also gets that emotional reaction. So once you can click people into that, now we can get into some of the harder things. This has fundamentally changed businesses around the world, and every kind of business. For example, most people know St. Jude. They've been a friend of mine, a client of mine for a long time. Now at St. Jude for a long time, and they do these wonderful events, a fun run or a program, you get something in the mail from them a lot. In a traditional setting, right, we're all punching our red, yellow, and our green dots. So in a traditional setting, the CEO is going to be presented, here's how many fun run people signed up, here's how many we got, 20% more than yet last year, terrific. And then the next one and the next one, now we're getting a false positive, right? Because we're measuring activity, not necessarily outcome. Now what we look at is donors. Did we bring, yes, the donors came from all these things, but did we bring in more donors and grow them than we lost? And how did we do that? You have to bolt the beginning of the conversation on, and it has changed the language and how leaders come together and how they're glued together. Interesting, right?
I think it's interesting because we're starting a conversation about customer experience and we're talking about math.
Yeah, I know.
And finances. But I think you're so right that you need to capture your CEOs, your CFOs, your CMOs' attention.
All the O's.
With figures that they care about.
That's right.
That they understand. And so not our numbers, but the numbers that they're talking about.
That's right.
There's something else you said, though, and I think this probably ties into it, that once we're talking a common financial language, you mentioned there's a story that goes behind it.
That's
right.
When the story comes storytelling.
What's the storytelling component?
So the storytelling is about telling the story of people's lives, their humanity, and how the things you did, sometimes inadvertently, either helped them or hindered them, and created, that wedge of, man, these aren't people I want to work with, or the stuff they're doing isn't making my life any better. Because at the end of the day, people are going to talk about three things. They're going to talk about, did you do what you said you're going to do? Did you improve my life? And how did you make me feel? Now, we have a lot of tools in our arsenal of how we tell that story. But what we need to do is connect it and create a one company version of the story. Today, we present the survey results and silo A goes scurrying off and does stuff on their own. Or silo B goes off and scurries things off on their own. And now again, the CEO is getting that false positive because we now got a list of 45 projects. And he's like, wow, we're really focusing on this customer thing. Good for us. Woohoo. Okay, so here's where the storytelling comes. Number one, we've got to rebuild and re-identify the work of our business to be defined by customers' goals, okay? Not even the journey stages, because sometimes when I ask people, what are your journey stages, it's their sales funnel. Find, sell, conquest, resell. I'm like, that's not the customer's journey. And the customer doesn't linearly go through it. So do the Vulcan mind meld. Rethink the work of your business based on what goal you want your customers to say that they've achieved, okay? There's probably 5 to 6 big ones that are going to require a lot of parts. For example, and this is culture changing. When we were doing work with Bombardier Aerospace, this was the part of Bombardier that was selling private planes to high wealth individuals, okay? Right after I was there, they were doing Oprah's plane. Oh my God, it was a whole big thing. Oprah's dishes and this and that. But anyway, I digress. A lot of times when we build journey stages, and this is important because this is the storytelling. If your storytelling is flawed from the beginning, you're going to continue to be inward focused. They wanted to call it the sales and service experience. Now, does a customer have a sales and service experience with you? They don't think about it that way, right? These people thought about the keep me flying experience. So the keep me flying experience is not, yes, it includes the parts, but it's also, do you have enough pilots? Do you have enough people? Do you have a concierge? If the plane has to take an unscheduled stop, are you going to put them in a nice hotel? Are you letting them know? And is your metric number of days your people is in the air, or are you measuring how many parts in your warehouse and how many you've got? When you're measuring the wrong stuff, you're going to get a green dot for something that's a red dot for the customer. Does that make sense?
I feel like that should be on a t-shirt somewhere.
I think you're right. For example, a lot of companies, everybody calls it the billing experience. You know what it is? The was it worth it experience.
Okay.
Which starts all the way down before you got the bill of were you explained what you were going to get and how much it was going to cost. Okay, so redefine the goals. That now becomes, okay, why? Let's now traverse these goals and understand if we delivered on them or if we didn't, okay? We got to build a business decision blueprint. The next piece of the storytelling comes by aggregating a lot of information or listening and telling it by goal versus in those dashboards that the silos can cherry pick in a lovely, well-intended way. Everybody's working hard, but we're working hard separately and we're spewing projects and we're giving a false positive. So social media, what are people saying about that goal in social media? In your incoming, all your free stuff, what does it say about that? How about your verbatims? Let's show the spaghetti bowl. I'm Italian, sorry, my hands are flying. Let's show the spaghetti bowl of how many times somebody had to try to do this. Human listening, send your leaders out to do that. And then end with the survey score related to that thing. But what we're doing and that we have to do is herd the cats on how we categorize the stuff. So we have a common categorization. We can now bring it together for the convergence by goal versus by media. Because we're randomizing our leaders. Here's the social media person going to present her report today. Today, the complaint lady is going to present her stuff, right? Who can keep track of this? I have a simple mind. I'm always just trying to aggregate it.
Well,
So that's where
that's
the storytelling comes.
I think that's a key insight, that if we're redefining the problem from our customer's perspective, one of the biggest challenges that CEOs and executives face is, you're right, they're looking at these dashboards and they're very easy to manipulate. If I have a customer facing survey, for example, it's very easy to manipulate that survey. I could write it a certain way. I
Right.
can only offer it to happy people. I could beg customers to give me great scores, and
That's
then I
right.
get a green dot.
That's right. You get a green. We're loving our life. We're living for the green dot. So then the fourth thing in the storytelling is your actual operational KPIs, right? And again, how many times did that plane have to come on the ground when it shouldn't have? Versus how many parts and services did we sell, right?
So this is how many times did we not fulfill our promise to the customer or not
Right.
solve their problem?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Because we're measuring the wrong stuff. There's a clinic in Seattle called the Seattle Spine Clinic. Traditionally, what they're going to measure is, right, how long you're sitting in the waiting room. Whoa ho, green dot. What customers care about is how many days do I miss from work because you're making me go on 4 appointments when if you could get your silos together, I can walk in the door once and be organized. And did I have to do any unnecessary MRIs or other things? So they have changed their KPIs or metrics to be around what the customer cares about, not only their internal things. So here's the storytelling. As a result of the experience, did we earn the right to grow? I call them competencies. Competency 1. Competency 2, let's now traverse our customers' goals to find out why. In this third goal, oh my gosh, our social media spiked. Here's what's going on. In our complaint group, here's what they're saying about this as well. We sent you out to try to do that. What did you go through? Here's clunk, the pound of paper we make our customer go through. Here's our verbatims, and here's our survey score. Notice where we put that at the end. And finally, no wonder this happened, because in 60% of the times in this past quarter, we weren't hitting the KPIs that our customers care about.
That our customers care about.
Yes. So now what we're doing, and this is all about cat herding. That's why for a period of time, you don't have to have a chief customer officer call them that, but you need somebody to aggregate the stuff so the storytelling hooks. Because even if you do that as a group of people, I like doing what I call a customer room, where you kind of go through this stuff and actively do it once a month, a quarter, definitely before annual planning. In a real world, if you were only doing it by silo, every silo is going to pick their own project and only pick a part of it, right? But even when you're doing it as a group, you've now circled, let's say 10 things. How many things do you really have the capacity to work on? Maybe 1 or 2. So we have to manage capacity creation as well. And also manage redundancy. Because we've got all these offshoot projects going on, do an inventory. Once you get what I call one version of the truth of what your customers' real goals are, inventory all the projects going on in very well-intended way that are duplicative or layering over, so that you can start to streamline the efforts to get customers to solve their goals. So that's kind of what took me 35 years to figure out how to talk about this stuff.
Well, you're putting it together, I think, pretty succinctly. I can already see a lot of people listening to this, watching this. They're nodding. They're getting the aha. I want to be respectful of our time. There's one question I really wanted to make sure that I ask you.
Sure.
You talk about a concept called leadership bravery.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could expand on it a little bit and how that fits into being the kind of leader that you've been talking about today.
Sure. So leadership bravery is about choosing how you will grow, and just as deliberately being really clear about what you won't do to grow. One of the things that is also missing in so much of these transformations is starting with, how will we be remembered? What's our legacy? Are we unforgettable? And we're not really clear about defining how we want our actions to show who we are as people. Then build that into our operating model and then live that as leaders. For example, Virgin Hotels just came out, a few years ago, one of Richard Branson's business love childs. They decided very clearly that they considered Wi-Fi a right, not a revenue stream. They also, yes, they also decided you're not going to crack open a $7 bottle of water in the middle of the night there. They build what they call street pricing. They actually have their managers go around to whatever neighborhood you're in, and whatever you can buy a Snickers bar for in the corner market, that's what you get, because they want to earn your right and your growth from the service, not from the additional revenue streams that are gotcha moments or really bind you in and really are taken from you versus earned by them. You know, Southwest Airlines, for example, for years has had to fend off that they're not going to charge for pillows, etc. We need to have those guardrails of our non-negotiables, of what we will and will not do to grow, so that when you're being pitched for the green dot work or whatever by very well-intended silo leaders, you say, look, that's not how we grow here. Does that make sense?
It makes
And
sense.
it's bravery, man. It's bravery. Alaska Airlines, they give their people something that they call a We Trust You toolkit, where they've given them an option on an app to decide 5 or 10 things that they can offer in the moment without asking for permission. If you had a bad day, if they, you know, you encounter a baggage handler and you look like a grump that day, they can give you miles, they can give you a lunch, you know, whatever it is, because you know, eyeball to eyeball in the moment, how you're going to keep that customer and keep their revenue more than some random rule that was created in the boardroom. So that's bravery, to trust your people with the information and the answer in the moment. So it's bravery all around. And that's what's diminishing the spirit of companies. And that's what's making us vanilla.
Jeanne, you are definitely not vanilla. I think a lot of people's brains are going to be super full. How do people find you? I know they're going to want to learn more. I know they're going to find your books, find some of your content. I love your new website with some of the videos
Thank
you have there. How do they find you?
Well, I lucked out. I married a guy named Bliss. Everybody thinks I've made that up, right? So I went all over Match.com to find him. I'm just kidding. Customerbliss.com. And what I was talking about just now is called My 5 Competencies. It's from one of my important books called Chief Customer Officer. So when you look on the hamburger, the little menu, it'll say the 5 competencies. And there's actually a video of me talking about each one, as well as an audit. I'm a giver. There's all kinds of free stuff on there for you.
That's too good. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Big honor
Thank
for
you.
me. That was a
Well,
lot of fun.
hey, we're all, you know, raising the water level together. So it's an honor to stand here and or sit here and have this conversation with you too, Jeff.